Hello, everybody. I am so overwhelmed. I'm trying not to cuss. I can actually cuss in Romanian, and no one will know, unless there are some Romanians here, but most people won't know. So language is such a funny thing. I went to Romania a few years ago, and then I went back, and then it basically hijacked my life and a third of my book. And when you're learning a language, it changes your poetry. For a year, I went around when I didn't know the word and I had to speak Romanian. I would try to say the equivalent of, I don't have the words. So I'd be at the pharmacy, I need some Claritin, and îmi pare rău, I'm sorry, nu am cuvinte, I don't have the words. And this is the face I got every time. After a year of saying this, I realized I was actually saying a phrase. I was telling everyone that I was quite speechless. Every mundane thing. I need to buy this. I'm sorry, I'm speechless. Well, îmi pare rău, nu am cuvinte. I am absolutely speechless to return home and see so many of you guys. I can't even believe this is happening. Lloyd, I made the right decision to do poetry. I was hell-bent on medical school for years. 6 years I prepared. And I didn't get in, and it was the most devastating news in my life. And then I remember meeting Lloyd at Cafe Pamplona. In the meantime, I'd been publishing, and I thought I had this terrible idea to get an MFA. And he said, I think that's a terrific idea. And here I am, and thank you so much for coming. I will say I'm so excited to be here. Makak pe mine. You don't know what that means, but Indian River at dusk. The first and only time I caught a sheep head big enough to eat, black and white and breathing in my hands. On my way to get ice, I got distracted, tossed Dad's keys in the water. I was a good Catholic. I walked him to the spot and pointed. I made up a lie, but I named everyone I loved to God before falling asleep in my yellow room every night. God was a word person. After 2 Hail Marys and an Our Father, I'd be good again. Like my words, I knew where the keys landed. I've tried to write about this before. For over a year, I made myself guiltless. Oh my God. Couldn't preserve the thing I caught or get the syntax right. I didn't know about currents. I can't keep anyone safe. People keep showing up and it's exploding my heart. First love poem I ever wrote and met. Morning love poem. Dreamt last night I fed you, unknowingly, something you were allergic to, and you were gone, like that. You don't have even a single allergy, but still, the dream cracked. Cars nosedived off snowbanks into side streets. Sometimes dreams slip poison, make the living dead, then alive again, twirling in an unfamiliar room. It's hard to say, I need you enough. Today I did. Walked into your morning shower fully clothed. All the moments we stop ourselves just because we might feel embarrassed or impractical or get wet. Have you heard of the literary death match? It's like sports for writing, and sometimes it's in a boxing ring. I got asked to do this in Bucharest. An American writer started it, and he does it all over the world, and you have to perform. And I dumped a bottle of water over my head when I got to the shower part with this deadpan look, and everyone was shocked, and I won. And after that, I got invited to perform. All I ever do is get invited to perform poems, and I just love reading poems. This is the first poem I ever finished. Visiting Amber at Lowell Correctional. A windowless room. Mom and I remove oh, I'm messing it up, I'm so excited. A windowless room. Mom and I remove shoes, socks, spread our arms wide between the cinder block wall and locked door. The guard takes a swallow of V8 before patting us down. Inside, I ask Amber if this is a maximum security facility. She tells me they've got her in here with murderers, like the gardener. Worked at a daycare, killed a few kids there, buried them alive. They gave her yard duty until she began to name the trees she planted. Josie, Maggie, Stephanie. Slicing deep into her thighs, she mortared her wounds with shit and got gangrene. In a wheelchair now. Don't want to think about her no more, Amber says. Seeing her every day is bad enough. An inmate takes Polaroids, $2 each, acrylic wall paintings in the background. One of an angel, feathers fanned out against a pastel sky. Stand here, Amber says. I want you to have wings. She's to my right, our mother to my left. We smile big. When I dream about my sister, she's a child. In our Florida backyard, wide-eyed and silent. She fills buckets with garden snakes, catches strawberry-necked lizards poised with the want of a mate. With one hand, she holds a wriggling lizard. With the other, she hinges its jaws open, then closed, onto the lobe of her ear. I don't know if any of you visit relatives or friends in prison, but they make it the most absolutely unnatural experience. The last time I went to visit my sister in a jail before they moved her to a prison, she was in the same building, but they banned us from visiting her in the same room. So you had to go into this concrete room and wait for the person to appear on a screen. So you were just with all of these people waiting, staring at monitors for no good reason. Visitation tank. That's what they're called. The sign above the entrance. Through these doors pass the finest law enforcement officers in Florida. I hand over my identification, receive station 35. 2 rows of steel stools bolted to concrete in a windowless room. No excessive emotionalism will be permitted. Rule 17. We all sit, waiting for a different low-resolution face to replace the shadows of our own on the unlit monitors. The woman behind me tells me about her old man. He's in here because he shot my dog, you know. But he's not dead, the dog. She can't afford to answer his calls. My screen powers up to an orange plastic chair, countdown by seconds in the corner. A girl next to me drops the receiver, walks out. Her man looks down at his hands. 6 minutes pass. Amber enters from the left, rubbing her eyes. 53 minutes, 6 seconds. 20 years ago, when the 4 of us lived in that 1-bedroom apartment on Jenkins Road, Dad would drive us in his beat-up Dodge Ram right past this jail. Red cooler propping up the driver's seat as we buoyed down Rock Road onto the dead-end dirt road through the orange groves to the quarry. We swung from the hook of a rusted crane and ran together off cliffs, stretching into unnamed shapes as we fell and slapped the warm water. Here, Dad discovered the mud was clay, dropped handfuls of it into a bucket, and in our little kitchen, we molded and baked on a cookie sheet, abstract faces that fit, warm and smiling in our palms. That Dodge Ram, man. I tried to get my driver's license in it, and you had to do the blinker like this. And we showed up at the DMV, and they just said, no, you can't get your driver's license test in this car. So I ended up calling a friend who was a very spoiled kid, and I took it in an Acura lowrider. Title poem, The Amoeba Game. I stood at the stove, holding a wooden spoon in my right hand, listening to butter sputtering against the splattered circle of an egg. Perhaps it was the flapping of the egg's wavy edges against the steel pan, or the amorphousness of its innards outside the carriage of its brown shell. I remembered an odd game I played in Brownies, the amoeba game. In the front yard of the scout cabin, one girl at a time would become an amoeba and lead the rest. We didn't know what amoebas were, only that they weren't human or animal, and moved like 1,000 blind legs treading through molasses. So it was that our heads and arms became legs and feet, undulating wayward into dusk. Swaying our shoulders left to right, we'd giggle through mouths we weren't supposed to have, pretending we had no eyes and didn't know where we came from or where we were going. You guys doing okay? You awake? Okay, I have the silliest dad in the world. I'll have a competition, my dad against your dad. Anything goes. One time he called me and I answered the phone and he said, "Don't answer the phone, I'm trying to leave you a message. I'm at the county fair and it's closed and I'm just having all of the cows moo into everybody's answering machine." One time he went to a hotel, he never takes vacations, and he was so excited they had a swimming pool and he could go swimming, but it didn't have a pool. "But they have a fountain," he said. And he went swimming in the fountain and sent me a picture. Skurtu, Romania. Dad hears there's a town in Romania where almost everyone is a Skurtu. And I think about Joanne fabric, the aisles of zippers, mismatched bolts of cloth that frenzied my eyes electric. And on all of these, a zebra-striped sticker with the letters SKU. Skurtu supplies. If this town exists, I imagine it's full of dads teaching their children to draw shapes. Circle, square, slibby-doo. A town with balls. Like Dad, when a cop pulled him over for no apparent reason, looked at his license and said, "Step out of the car, Mr. Skurtu." Looking that cop in the eye, Dad said, "That's not how you pronounce it. My name is Mr. Screw You." In that one family town, no one loses a name. Unlike Mr. Fraid, whose grandfather at Ellis Island spoke the only English words he knew but couldn't spell. I am afraid, and fear, with a foreign accent, renamed him. This got sent out in a poetry newsletter recently, and they ended it at Mr. Screw You. And I thought, oh man, this sounds like a really bad joke. Some days begin like this. The fear of forgetting I am well crawls into my mouth like a word that regrets being spoken. It presses sour phrases against my teeth, tongue, and gums. I want to tell it, stop, that I am well, that my blood is my blood. But as I'm ready to swallow, it wedges another phrase onto the back of my tongue. Something about the flawlessness of the antibody's memory, how it never forgets the image of the mother that abandoned it here. I read that poem to Liza's dad one time, and he said, "Oh, did somebody abandon you?" Metaphors. I grew up in South Florida, so I could see spaceships every time they launched. I thought everyone in the world could do the same thing. Discovery, negative, return. 7 tubes of blood in a neat line. A needle longer than a finger slides into the muscle between ribs. A spaghetti strand of organ suspended in clear solution. Some days my doctor says you have to napalm the napalm. But this morning he says, undetectable. And it's Thursday, the 29th of September, 1988 again. On the news, discovery is inching closer and closer to the moment of truth. I'm outside with my class, squinting at a trail of cloud as discovery's pinprick spark disappears. For every disbelief, an equal and opposite belief. Outside the blood draw clinic, I believe I see a passenger plane. Upside down, dragging backwards, it banks to a still speck. Okay, so now we've arrived in Romania. My life is upside down and I'm discovering a language and I have no idea what kind of poetry I'm writing, like always. Limit. My body, a strange passenger, surrounded by walls of books in a language I don't understand. I'm trying for sleep in another country. I'm taking pictures of you. This poem has an apple in it. I didn't want it to be an Adam and Eve poem. I stayed at this really strange hotel. I knew I wanted to write this poem for a long time. And above the bed at this hotel was the most horrible Adam and Eve painting ever with a giant snake. And you didn't even want to be below this painting in a bed. It helped me write the poem, though. Spoiled. You don't know how to give your words to the world this morning. So you get out of bed, grab a shirt from the pile of worn shirts, take a walk to the corner market. I'm listening to the man in the apartment below sing, "Oh, don't you wanna take her home?" And you're half asleep, picking through a bin of fruit. You come back to bed with a perfect apple, put it in my palm. So small, so red. I can't wait to eat it alone. I shut the door behind me in the kitchen and turn on the news. 2 dumbfounded men lean over the world's new largest loaf of rustic potato bread, 96.6 kilograms. The man below the apartment sings, "Oh, don't you wanna break her?" I bite the apple and wish I hadn't. The flesh mealy, a mouthful of sweet mashed potatoes I spit into the garbage. The news anchor eyes the big mound of bread like a trampoline. The other man pierces it with a serrated knife. A perfect, yeasty line of steam mists up and out of the screen, warming this room where I sit, holding the world's most horrible apple, listening to Romanian Blondie on a loop, and to you in the shower down the hall, scrubbing the sweat of our morning from your skin. Okay, so I read this poem the other night at the Grolier. It has a children's book reference in it. The girl with the green ribbon around her neck. Do you know this? This story scarred me as a child. It's about a girl with a green ribbon around her neck her whole life. I feel like there are kids here, and I don't want to scar any children, so I will act it out. So at the end of her life, someone removes the ribbon, and And I start screaming, crying, and my dad took the book back to the library and tried to have it removed from the children's section, but I think it's been there ever since. Bar poem. I'm here on the patio, no appetite, drinking a salty margarita. I feel my liver, ignore it like last night's glass of water. I'm tired of writing you down when I should be writing poems about place. Dusk hits, beyond the man playing the red accordion on the corner, and the strays of Yash bark out a score backed by dissonant frequencies of the evening bells. This morning, I took a walk and found a noseless man pumping gypsy love songs on his accordion. I stared into the holes of his face and thought about the girl with the green ribbon around her neck. Had you read the story backwards, we might not have lost our heads. It's late. What time is it? I ask a poet who isn't you. There's time enough, he says. When I was writing this section of the book, I would have advised you not to date poets, or not to date poets that weren't functional. But now I'm married to a poet, and it's awesome. And his English is not his first language, so we laugh about simple words. What does that mean? But he understands a lot, and he's the best English-speaking Romanian I've ever met, in case you're watching this. Night communion. We met at the revolving hotel door. You'd shaved 3 weeks of growth while I had 3 glasses of wine in the lounge. I was too early. I'd gone and come back. You're late, you said. I touched your cheek, your neck, your Adam's apple beating from a slip of the blade. Chanting lured us diagonally across the street to the Orthodox evening service. Asters spiraled the pillars. We stood on the steps behind the crowd, a grievous a cappella glow, a special ceremony. Men right beside the women tonight. Maybe Mary, you said, or a marriage. I thought Jude. These be they who separate themselves sensual, having not the spirit. You tapped my shoulder, made a quick sign of the cross, and we turned and ducked away. A shoeless gypsy baby threw her bottle at your feet. You set it upright beside her mother, walked on ahead of me toward an oak growing out of and thick as the sidewalk. I took a blurry photograph of you approaching this trunk, and behind you, the painted white arrow on the asphalt pointed back to where I stood. You'd just walked over it. Tomorrow, I'd be leaving. It wasn't yet late. I was beginning to dream in your language, you, already too good at mine, afraid of falling. We arrived at a comedy club without a comedy act. The cognac, too sweet. We sat upstairs. I faced the mirror. Tell me a story, you said. This is my last poem, and it's the last poem of the book. I got invited, some of you probably did too, because there are a lot of poets in the room, to write for an hour in Emily Dickinson's bedroom. And it was amazing. And I showed up and thought, I can't write a poem on demand. So I just started looking. It was being not renovated. What do you call it when you put it back to how it originally was? Restored, thank you. And I was crawling around on the floor and looking in the wall and doing all kinds of things I probably shouldn't have been doing. And it's in here. I respected the house, though. Postscript Vermeer. Must be mid-morning, the even light hitting the young woman's forehead straight on through a window we can't see. She's reading a letter, been stuck on the first third of the page for more than 300 years. Behind her, a cobalt rod braces some map of an unreadable world. She's waiting for the words of the person we don't know. Her person, like anybody's person. It's just a picture. What's so special about a picture? I've been standing here almost 43 minutes staring at this woman, her left profile, a char-brown splotch, upside-down clover bloomed over her cheek like an intentional mistake. Watching her is like waiting for your person, one breath in a long conversation, letter you wrote but didn't send. The longer you stare, you start to get a feeling. Last year, I was given 1 hour alone in Dickinson's bedroom to write a poem. I watched a magnolia petal spiral past the panes and listened to a lawnmower 1 yard over, the soft scrape of my nib. I wrote what I heard through the walls. If she chose you, she was persistent. If you didn't write back, she'd write until you did. I was on my hands and knees, feeling the ridges in the stripped floorboards. I reached inside an exposed wall. I wanted to be close to being inside what it was, the rectangular seam cracking the yolk yellow wall in the shape of its original door. A knock on one of the 3 doors. 2 minutes. What was it I wanted to write? 1663. No cameras back then. When is that? It's been over an hour. An older man walks in, he and I the only ones. I watch him, watching the woman read the letter that might or might not have been hers to read at all. It hurts to go through walls, says a poem beside the painting, but how necessary after all. I think he messed up a little. In a letter, a year and a half after his death, Vermeer's widow wrote, "In a day and a half, he went from being healthy to being dead." She might or might not be pregnant. Sometimes it's a dark splotch in the light that draws us. Might or might not be a mistake, this bloom around the middle of the mind. Sometimes writing through walls hurts, but is necessary. We don't have enough time to look at everything in the museum. What do you see in this painting? We came all the way here for this. It's much smaller than I thought. Thank you.
So thank you all so much for joining us. Copies are up at the front desk, and if we can make the signing line up this aisle, stage left, your right, that would be wonderful. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Let's have another hand for Tara.